Hello, my name is Kang Lee. I'm the project director for Towers of Aghasba, an upcoming game launching early access. And first off, I just really want to say thank you to the community and the support we have gotten over the years. Without you guys, we wouldn't have been able to push it this far. All of the positive and warm comments has really helped us to get us all the way from prototype to the funding stages, and now many years later finally to early access. We're so excited and nervous to sort of share this experience with you. So why early access? I think, as you can tell from the trailer, it's quite an ambitious game, and the budget is fractional compared to that ambition. That's basically it. And we are at the point now where we feel like, yes, it's there. The vision is intact, and we deliver as much as we can given the limitation. And it's time to release it, and I think hopefully improve and really get to the vision that I want the game to be and the polish I want it to be over the years with our audience. And hopefully this will be the first of many more videos of behind the scenes and sharing some of the processes and the sort of like mindset and inspiration where this game has come from and where it's heading. So I'm about to share a video. It was supposed to be a private press only behind the scene hands-off presentation, but heard from a few people that maybe the whole community should take a look at it, just because it's pretty transparent and sort of straightforward, and describe all the challenges and the inspiration also for Towers. So I hope you will enjoy it. Thank you. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with us today. My name is Kang Lee. I'm the CEO and director for Towers of Aghasba, which is made by a very talented and passionate team, Dreamlit. And Towers, our first title under the Dreamlit label. And prior to Dreamlit, me and Dave, we were the founders for Adhesive Games, which made Hawken, being a huge fan of Mech Warriors myself, and all the Japanese games like Steel Battalions, and a bit of history about the seed of the idea of Towers. It was actually, I wanted to make this game even before Hawken, so the original idea was back in 2009. It was the early days of Minecraft, and I thought the gameplay was just so fresh, right? That was before all the survival games that came out. It just felt like the idea of just utilizing resources in the world to build and have the sandbox experience was just so cool to me. But as an illustrator, concept artist, the blocky shapes of it was not really something I'm into. Imagine what kind of game that I can use that kind of mechanic, but from a visual inspiration source like Shadow Colossus, and animation from Ghibli like Nausicaa or Princess Mononoke. Actually, a prototype of Towers as a 2D side scroller, which I hope to share someday. It's actually pretty fun to look at. You've made like little character models and all the parallax graphics and stuff. Nausicaa being probably the biggest influence from Ghibli films. I mean, all their films are inspiring. I don't know if you know, but even Zelda Breath of the Wild, all of those games are inspired by Ghibli films. There's a sense of flight. You can see the windmills, the big creatures, the strange forest, the sort of like the harvesting that the girl is doing here with getting the spores. And I just love that world. It feels like a place I want to explore and live in. Here are some very early concept back in 2009. You can see I didn't even finish some of them. They're just kind of like very quick ideas. I love the idea of the Mario game where you're kind of gliding down with your cape. So you got to remember, this is before Zelda Breath of the Wild came out. So the original idea was that you're like this forest being with almost having a squirrel flying squirrel-like wings to glide down from trees to trees and climbing them. This element of freedom of movement, of flying around, gliding around, um, has always been the main inspiration or the main excitement for Towers for me. And also the strange creatures, as you see here, this sort of like whimsical but almost like dark horror in a way, like a Brian Froud, labyrinth kind of vibe. With this sense of mankind, the hubris of building towers and the destruction of nature and the balance that we have to find. So I kind of left that idea in the background and focused on Hawken, a sci-fi, completely different type of game. But it's always been brewing. Then when Zelda Breath of the Wild came out, I was like, wow, like that's it. I think an Unreal Engine is time to really make this game. So with the sort of like exploration and discovery gameplay, but mixed with the builder game aspect, it was supposed to be a bit more survival-y, based on Minecraft before. But once I play Animal Crossing, I was like, wow, like I think this is a fresh take on it because I really want a lot of players to be involved. I think survival game have this very hardcore and niche audience. Fans of Ghibli films, family friendly type of audience to be able to enjoy Towers. So the original trailer back in 2019 shows a bit more of a survival PvE game, and yeah, we transitioned to a bit more of a open world sandbox builder game with the novel take of the player also having to build ecosystem and forests and having to balance between nature and civilization. And that aspect of it was inspired by a game called Viva Pinata, where you players sort of have to lure animals and through their player choices. And the feel is very much Nausicaa and as you can see here, Princess Mononoke, to be able to build a beautiful forest so then you can lure these strange creatures to your ecosystem. And for the visual style, I think the choice was to go with a bit more African and Aztec and just kind of ancient culture like the Jomon from Japan versus a lot of the fantasy games are mostly westerns or Asian influence. I think a tribal fantasy style fits our game mechanic pretty well. I really love the process of making a game, all the technical challenges that comes with it. But these days, I think because there's everything being so digital, all of the pipeline that we're doing. So one of the things I want to test out was using real hand painted texture. And I actually became friend with an artist from Ghibli Studio that works for Miyazaki, and he's actually a background painter. So I just want to share some of the images here where I visit the studio. You actually see Miyazaki's desk sitting behind him, the little brown table in the back. And many of our game textures are made this way, hand painted with poster color. Um, I'll play a little clip of video here. We'll take that painting, literal painting, scan it in, and then convert through a pipeline and turn into a texture for the game. So being a huge fan of Ghibli Studio and all their films, is such an honor to be able to have a bunch of these texture where literally in our game in Towers, when you look down at your feet or stare at a rock or certain walls, you can see the hand painted texture on them, and it's quite beautiful. I can't wait for people to experience it. And here's the Ghibli artist working on one of our texture. And much of the shots in these videos are captured on PS5 Pro. And I was actually quite shocked of how good it performs because my laptop has a 4080 RTX graphic card, and I'm getting lower frame rate than the PS5 Pro. So I think for graphic parity and just for performance, is quite powerful. And we try to leverage as much of the hardware as we can. So some of the graphic features and things, Cosmin can share in more details at the end of this video. The PS5 Pro also have very fun and interesting features for their controllers, like haptic feedback. And the following is Colin, our audio expert, sharing some of his process for utilizing these cool controller features.
We've very widely used rumble in towers, and that's possible because of the excellent rumble dynamics of the PS5 controller. I can give lots of tactile feedback without overwhelming or distracting the player. I've used a combination of sending suitable audio to a rumble audio bus, but I've also been able to create a large set of rumble only audio assets that I've designed for very specific and unique rumble situations on the PS5 controller. For instance, when pulling back the bow, it's very mild and actually ebbs and flows with the bow's tension audio. In towers, we've used ambisonic assets. That, of course, will come alive in a Dolby Atmos setup. But in just standard 5.1, 7.1, or even in Atmos emulation, the places where we've used ambisonics will create a superior audio experience as the camera pans around the 3D space. Like in the shoreline, which uses ambisonic audio, as you move the camera around up and down, the sound of the ebbing and flowing water moves around naturally and sounds amazing, as opposed to just bouncing from speaker to speaker.
And the game start on the beach. You have been shipwrecked with your fellow crew, and you belong to a tribe called the Shimu, and they have long left this place. Something happened here. Maybe they screw it up, but there was an exodus long ago, and now you come back as the children of the Shimu people. And the land is pretty much completely barren. There isn't much to even harvest initially. So unlike other sort of survival or crafting games where you sort of loot from nature, for towers, I want it to be a game where you have to sort of build up nature first. So the first thing you have to do is plant a colossal seed, which kickstart the life and help you sort of lure new animals and plants start growing again, which allows you to harvest, and then you can have resources to craft. So there are three main aspects to towers. The first being exploration and discovery, the second being ecosystem growing and nurture, and then there's the town building aspect. And what I'm most excited about is the ecosystem growth and nurture. So let's talk about that first. And as I mentioned, you start with a colossal seed, which has a sprite NPC of sort that gives you quests to further grow the colossal trees taller and taller. And player have complete freedom of where they plant this colossal tree, and wherever they grows it, it basically transforms the land. And the islands is quite vast. It takes at least 30 minutes to run across it, and it's pretty much like a blank canvas for your nature building. So imagine by the end of the game, you can probably fill up about 30-40% of the island with the ecosystem that you've grown. So it's completely your choice of where to grow these various ecosystems. So even though the landscape is handcrafted, the player choice sort of shape uh, what type of forests, where they are, and what animals sort of live there. Because depending on your choices, the plant life, the animal life are different from your island, let's say, to your friend's islands. So it's a truly world building game. I think on a very vast scale. It's imagine as if you're playing Assassin's Creed or something, like a smaller version of it. But imagine every forest that you encounter, or every town that you see, are player creative choices. And as we have shared in the previous trailer, we have three completely different ecosystems. Each of them have a colossal trees, two types of grand trees, many other variety of trees, shrubs, and plants to grow and harvest. Player will be planting seeds, placing fertilizer to speed up the growth, helping the wounded creatures that lives there. Of course, you can also hunt, or you can be kind and feed the animal. They all have their own preference of food. You can be hunting or you can be nurturing. It's all player choices. There's a bit of a balancing act of how much you should be growing versus hunting, because we don't really necessarily punish you. Like, is the game is similar to Animal Crossing where you don't regress, but you do progress slower if you over hunting. So it's best to sort of hunting and harvesting in moderation. It takes time for the plants and trees and the animal life to respawn and regrow. So if you do it in a balanced way, then you will progress the game in a much more optimal manner. And the original inspiration for this is I watched a documentary about how people were able to find water in the desert by sort of they tied up a monkey and they feed it salt to the super thirsty. And once they let the monkey go, it runs to the water hole, right? So it's that sort of elders' knowledge of the land, and I think it'll be very fun to do that in this fantasy world. So it's not just like breaking rock or cutting down trees, which we do have, but we definitely have a lot of more interesting and unique variety of player actions, like climbing on a creature's back to harvest something from it. Or you come up to a wounded creatures in the forest and you help to heal it, and then it will give a reward. So random quests like that, or just relaxing activities like fishing. But even fishing in our game is not just a typical fishing rod, but uh, we have bow fishing. It's actually one of my favorite activities to do in the game. It's quite relaxing just to stand and look down the water and really keep a focus on a certain fish. And using our tether bow, you can fire at it and yank it out the water. And it's quite fun to have this experience with friends because you could be the one kind of aiming down, and your friend could be the one swimming in the lake to lure the fish to a certain direction. And of course, the fish that you caught are used in recipes, cooking, potions, but you can also use it as a feed to other animals, and it makes them happy when they get a certain type of food that they like. And catching fish also unlocks them in your, we call it Shimu decks, pretty much a Roto decks. And we have over 70 different type of fish. And as I mentioned, the animals doesn't exist in the first place. So as you grow these ecosystem, the fish will be replenished in the lake body nearby. So if your friend pretty much restore a certain eco or grow a certain ecosystem in a different place than you do, then the type of fish that lives there is different than your island. This encourages trading, friends visiting each other's islands. We want to encourage that sort of cooperation and PvE gameplay. And that's just fishing. We have many other activities that player can do in ecosystem. And similar to Zelda Breath of the Wild, you can pretty much climb anywhere. So many of the trees that you grow, you can climb on them. They're quite fun. They all have sort of like very interesting shapes, and they bear fruit. Sometime they give you seeds to grow more plants and trees. So yeah, we definitely encourage that sort of free form jungle gym. You're sort of like a little monkey, climbing around these vast giant trees. So it's pretty fun. And it's definitely prone to a lot of bugs and errors and very difficult technical challenges, but we think it's worth it, and we're going to keep improving it in the DLC. And the longer and more effort you put into an ecosystem, the colossal trees and all the life around it, the larger the footprints it will be over time. So as the colossal trees get taller and taller, there will be more variety, and the creature that spawns goes from tiny little rabbits, to mid-size hairlope, to the very epic creatures like the High Walker that we show in the previous trailer. And from the 3 unique ecosystem, we have well over 40 creatures for players to lure and spawn into the world, and then also discover them to unlock them in your Shimu decks. And I want the player to feel like they're sort of like the forest god in Princess Mononoke, but they're also just like a busy bee, going around like a worker bee and um, pollinating flowers and plants and growing things. So that sort of nature gameplay is what made me first get excited about creating towers. All right, so quick recap. The players start out on a barren island. They plant colossal trees in various ecosystems, and now they're able to hunt and harvest the rewards that they have put so much effort into. And these items will lead into the game system of town building. So the player, as the children of the Shimu people, coming back to this island, your main ambition and goal is to restore your civilization to its former glory days and hopefully even surpass what your ancestors have done. As the name of the game suggests, towers, that's exactly what you'll be building. There are three different types of towns, and parallel to the colossal trees in the three different ecosystems, your goal is to get these towers to grow taller and taller, which unlocks more buildings type, more crafting stations. We have over 15 different types of buildings like hearth, clay pit, farm, compost shed, a kiln, blacksmith, stone mill, etc. And some are crafting station, other are converting station, pretty much dressed as buildings. So there's a bit of a decoration aspect to town building as well, as you place and arrange these various buildings for your various towns. It should feels like you sort of build out your dream fantasy towns and villages. And just like the colossal trees and the ecosystem, the locations of where you built these are just completely up to you. So we hope that when players visit each other's island, they can see completely different arrangements and different creativities between their choices. So from the vast variety of natural item and resources that you gain from the land and from your ecosystem, from the creatures you hunt and fish, and the seeds and fruits, they get feed into the town crafting and converting chain. But the towns between themselves, there's three different types. There's a citadel, there is the farming town, and then there is the mining town. And they cross pollinate with each other as well, kind of similar to a traditional civilization game, for example, like a simplified version of that. So I hope that players will focus on different villages types and so they can help each other when they visit each other's island, right? So one could be more focused on the farming and another more on the mining, and then they can trade the resources with each other. We also have a simplified merchant system that we're hoping to expand in the DLC, but for now there is ways to sort of earn gold through selling these items or converting these items, scrapping them. And all of this might sound a bit overwhelming, right? There's a lot of systems. And that's where we were so happy actually when we played Animal Crossing when it first came out. It's just we love the onboarding process of Animal Crossing. So the early part of Towers is a bit hand holding. And then we really open it up and let them unleash their creativity. And as we add more content in DLC, every island hopefully will be more and more different from each other, which really encourages them to visit each other's island and share rare resources or things that are not even on the other island at all because player make different choices. And my background as a concept artist for films and games over the years, I really have so much fun with the creative aspects of world building, and I really want the player to have that same sort of feeling that I have. And so towers have over hundreds of decoration items, from very small little fences to gigantic statues that you can build and windmills, like um, the inspiration from Nausicaa, those grand windmills in the distance. You can totally build your own fantasy village. You can build your own garden and parks or shrines and temples, a quaint village by the sea, or a mining town in a rugged canyon or in a mountain. The world is truly your canvas, and I can't wait to see what players come up with. And we hope to give them more creative tools and choices and asset and content in the DLC. All right, so that was a summary of our town building and decoration gameplay. Let's move on to the third piece, which is exploration and discovery. So you might have noticed, the game have that cutesy, whimsical aspect, but then there's also this sort of horror and darker side of it. And inspired by the atmosphere of Princess Mononoke and Shadow of Colossus, we have the Withered Land, which is an area where player cannot build or grow anything. And it's our way of gating the player early on, because one of the most challenging aspects of designing towers is if the world is kind of empty at the beginning, like a blank canvas, it could be very boring. So the player creates the fun, the player creates the ecosystem and build the town. And only from that point on, there's a lot more complexity and interesting choices for the player. So the Witherland allows us to have um, combat fun right from the start. 70% of the island initially is covered by the Witherland, and player will have to unlock or restore these Witherland into the basic biome of the land, which is temperate, tropical, and arid. And from those, you can build the ecosystems with the colossal trees. And each of these Witherland regions or biomes that you have to unlock, it gets progressively harder and more challenging. The enemies gets more dangerous. The items that require for you to restore the Witherland regions gets more difficult to obtain. So the player will unlock the easier Witherland first, build the ecosystem once they restore the land, and then they can build their towns and then get the crafting, the weapons, the potions and thing, and ready for the next difficult Wither regions to unlock. That's the basic loop. Pretty much uncover Witherland, create your blank canvas, grow ecosystem, grow the town, and get stronger, and then go for the next Wither region to unlock. And you restore Wither region not just through combat, but by completing quests and fill orders for restoring various shrines, ancient shrines, which leads into the next part of this presentation is the lore and the discovery. And working in films, I realized video games actually is a very difficult vehicle to tell stories. It's because you can have a very complicated and dramatic story, saving somebody, there's a urgency to complete a quest in a linear game, for example, and then people just go off and they go fishing, And so is you can be saying something very dramatic on a character, and then I'll be climbing the walls or the statues around them in Assassin's Creed, for example. So it's the gameplay and the stories are not congruent. So some of my favorite stories in games are actually stories that are from the past that the player now discover, right? Because you can do it through more gameplay mechanics like archaeology, relic discovery. You can find pieces of history, I think, and then that sort of story you sort of create in your head about what happens in the past, and still keep it mysterious and a bit unknown. I like players to use their imagination and kind of make up their own lore of what happened, so they get like only a piece of the story. And they do that through just traversing the vast land, on ruin site, kind of investigate various hints and piece it together slowly of what happened to the Shimu people and why they have left, and all the human drama that went on long ago. And there are many ruins and relics, and as you piece together these relics, you unlock a artifact that you can place in a museum that you built. Games do it through a journal, but I think it's much more interesting to kind of have a physical place for it. As you find these relics piece by piece and unlock more artifacts, you can read about them in the museum. And we have a historian character named Olsen, and she will reward you with recipes. And we put quite a bit of effort into our lore and cinematics. We hope the player will really enjoy the story that we sort of hint at them. And it's not like earth-shattering, saving the world kind of narrative. I like stories that are a bit more ironic, poignant, a little quirky. And you will meet many characters. Some are just part of your crew that comes to the island, and others are just strange inhabitant that still lives here. The forsaken land, the desolate land, until you show up. We look at this early access as just purely just the first chapter, and we hope to keep expanding on the lore and the richness of the history in subsequent DLC. Yeah, so that's the summary of some of the major aspects of Towers. There's still a few other systems. Yeah, so one thing being called the Amity system, and I'm actually quite excited about that one. It's basically a currency you gain or lose based on your player choices of being good or bad, which teaches players about moderation, which is, I think, something not encouraged in most of these survival games where it's all about hoarding. And I look forward to share more about it in another video because I think it is one of the more unique and novel aspects of Towers as well, just like our creative harvesting or our ecosystem buildings. So a last bit I want to touch on is just our multiplayer and our social aspect of the game. Obviously, it's a PvE game, and we want to encourage players to work together. But it's not a live ops sort of game, not a dedicated server. It's more similar to Animal Crossing, where every player have their own island, and then you can have 4 visitors to come and visit and enjoy and trade and just sort of check out the other players' creations. And hopefully, players will take on different choices and they go deeper on certain system, which allows them to be more unique in that aspect and be more useful to another player that focus on a different branch. And my hope was if we balance all this correctly, sometime you might even see a creature you have never seen on your island because you haven't gone that far down that other path of ecosystem building. And as we add more and more content in the DLC, we hope this diversify and make more richness in differences between the player choices and what they actually create their islands to be. Okay, so why early access? As you can tell so far, the game is quite ambitious and our budget is fractional of what it should be for this type of game. It took us a while to get here. As I mentioned, this idea was seeded back in 2009, and I started prototyping it in 2017, and it takes the prototypes, the trailer, the fundraising, the team building. I think we're pretty much rock and roll around 4 years ago. Many game system, content, the game being open world, sandbox, multiplayer, with the modest budget for its ambition. I expect on launch, early access, it would have inconsistent of quality in some aspects, bugs, imbalances. There's so much variety of system and content that we couldn't go very deep on them. So we hope to improve all of that with the community over time, fixing the frustration points and developing the game alongside with our audience. We're very grateful for the support so far over the years. We thought people would just pretty much forget about us, but there was a lot of people been waiting and they've been happy to see all the trailers come out recently. Our Discord is very lively, so we hope you join in. So even though I've been working on this for 7 years now, it feels like it's the beginning. We are all very excited and nervous about the launch. I think the team is working extremely hard in the next few weeks. And we hope you give us a chance and check out the game. And if budget limitation wasn't an issue, I would have loved to just come out as a 1.0 game and not early access. But the nature of an ambitious game with a very limited budget means I think early access is the best route for us. And for the community as well, I think, because we'll get to develop the games alongside with each other. Thank you for your time, and I hope to visit your island one day and see what you created.